Just lots of spooky stuff happens, right?
Yeah, I remember there was the scratching on the walls, and then Eleanor's name being written in on the walls. Those were probably the most supernatural parts of the movie, in my opinion, because I can't imagine Eleanor actually just writing her name in big bold letters on the wall.
Help Eleanor come home, right? That's what it said.
Yeah. I don't remember Dr. Montague's wife's name, or if it's even mentioned what her name was. But I don't understand why she wanted to communicate with the spirits. That is a question that I have. It's like, if it's haunted, why would you want to talk to them? I even said that in my discussion post. That makes no sense to me.
Yes,
I know.
she
Huh?
shows up with her friend, right, Arthur.
Yeah. The big thing that really stood out to me is when Eleanor and Theodora, their friendship, how it developed through the story, and then Eleanor eventually acts to go home with Theodora, and essentially Theodora rejects her, which leads Eleanor onto a suicidal path, which you never want to see anybody do. I think it was at the top of the house. I don't remember what it was called. What was that called?
You're talking
Anyway, she tried to kill herself, and after that point, I remember Doctor Montague. If I don't, is that how you pronounce his name?
Montague.
Montague. Yeah, Doctor Montague sent her away, and she said she had no home, which confuses me. Says, how does she even receive a letter if she had no home? She had to be living somewhere.
As far as that goes, I noticed that and I thought that too at first. But then I realized like this whole thing, home isn't a place, kind of, especially to Eleanor. I feel like the home she was searching for was a place to belong and people. And I felt like the people in the house gave her that and she felt that in the house. And then that rejection just kind of broke her.
Right, home is where the heart is, right? She lived with her sister, remember, Ryan, but she never didn't really have a home there necessarily. She was a burden to her sister. Um, like her sister was getting ready to go on vacation, was going to leave her alone, right? So, so she's very much there as a sort of burden. Her only purpose in life, almost before this, was to take care of her mother. Now that her mother's gone, she really has no um, purpose in living, almost. Um, so we very much get a very disturbed um, psych, psychiatric portrait of Eleanor here in this part of the book.
Yeah, she didn't have very good mental health. Which isn't it later where she crashes a car into a tree?
Yeah, she
That's how
goes
she
out.
died.
She,
I will be willing to bet that she did that on purpose.
yeah, she says that Hill House will not let her leave. Right? It has. She thinks that she's part of Hill House. So that's a question that's going to be up for debate today, right? You know, how much of this is Eleanor's mental health? Maybe some of it is perhaps real. Um, so yeah, good, Ryan. You summed up pretty much the gist of what happens. Um, there's lots of ways we can go about handling class. How about we take some of these characters and then we'll gradually lead up to Eleanor. Okay, let's take it a character by character, maybe. I forgot to ask you guys last week about the character of Mrs. Dudley. Right, she's she's almost a comic relief in a way in this book. What did you guys think of this character, Mrs. Dudley, the woman who makes them food, and she's like, I leave at 5 o'clock. I won't hear you screaming at night, in the dark.
And like the only thing she says to them is, I clear the table, I set lunch at 1, I clear at 2, or I set breakfast at 9. At first, I thought she was really creepy. I mean, I was thoroughly creeped out by her, but as the story went on, I feel like she kind of represented the routine of life that people get sucked into as adults. Like that routine, very strict, just straight, narrow path. And that was kind of like being imposed on them.
Right. So this group of people coming there throws Miss Dudley off her balance. So yeah, so anytime you see this performed like a movie or a play, I've seen it in a play too before. Anytime you see it performed, usually whoever plays Mrs. Dudley hams it up, right? In the night, in the dark. Right?
She reminds me of the Hunchback in the movies, like people like this. She reminds me of one of those people. I find it very funny.
Remember in the 90s version of this, the woman who plays, I don't know if any of you guys have seen Home Alone 3, but the old woman in Home Alone 3 plays Mrs. Dudley in the 90s one. She was surprisingly good in the role. Yeah, so this character, we get a little bit about her husband. The only time we ever see her husband in the books when he's letting Eleanor through the gates. Other than that, it's all Miss Dudley. What about so I just wanted to make mention of her. She always gives me a laugh. In the night, in the dark. Yeah, so what about Dr. Montague? We could bring his wife into the discussion here today too, but what do you guys think's going on with Dr. Montague? You guys think even his experiment is ethical? Right? Would it be taken? It mentions at the end that his published paper didn't really gain a lot of traction in the scholarly community. You guys think it's because this is just an unethical experiment? Does he let things get too far? Should he have kicked Eleanor out way before?
He reminds me of Dr. Frankenstein. He strikes me as very strange. Like, the way he does things is odd to me. Like, I don't know why he would have a social experiment with 3 people in a random haunted house. His ethics are odd, to say the very least.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that he really controlled the experiment very well and didn't regulate it very well. Like, there was no control group. There wasn't really a good sample selection of people. The group wouldn't have really gotten good results because it wasn't a very diverse group. And as far as him, I just feel like they went into it, if you're just looking at it from, the pure scientific view, they went into it with too much, not seriously enough, I suppose.
Right. So I think we mentioned this last class. I think it was you who mentioned this, Nicole. Just giving away the fact that they're there to be giving away the fact that they're there to be in a haunted house experiment might skew the data a little bit, right? I think we talked about that last time.
We did, and I think even having them all there together at the same time would have skewed it, because they could all build from each other's, supposed experiences.
Yeah, I don't think letting them know immediately that the house is haunted is good ethics because they're obviously going to forge something because it's very very likely that they will say something happened when nothing truly happened just to get their name on some kind of piece of paper saying that they did something.
Right. So maybe an attention seeker type of person will go out of their way to make something up, perhaps. We could definitely perhaps make that case about Eleanor, right? Is she just trying to get attention?
I'd say in some ways she is, but in others she's kind of not because she just wants to be wanted somewhere. Because back where she definitely wasn't wanted, and it's explained in detail in the beginning of the story of how terrible her life was. I think it was something like she hasn't had a good life since she was like 15 or some age. I don't remember exactly what age, but ever since then, her life has been miserable.
Yeah, she's 32 at this point in the book. So quite a while. Yeah. So his experiment, you guys all seem to be mostly consensus that his experiment does seem a little wonky, to say the least. Um, his wife, Miss Montague, this sets up almost a little subplot within the book of science versus mysticism. Like talk about an interesting couple. Right? He's very much wants to view this stuff from a scientific perspective. Here comes this woman in here with her Ouija boards and her planchette, and it seems like Shirley Jackson, the author, is just having fun with this character for the most part, right? I think the author is even having a little fun with her on how ridiculous she is. Um, what are you guys' thoughts on this character? What's up with her buddy who Arthur, right? What's up with that too? So,
I got major vibes from Arthur that there was more between them.
yeah. You cut out there, Nicole.
Sorry about that. That between, I feel like they had some kind of relationship going on. Like it just didn't make sense for her to have like just this random schoolmaster guy coming with her to drive her all the way there. I would understand if he was like a butler or some kind of like driver for them or a chauffeur, but he was just a friend.
Right? Dr. Montague's seems like he kind of like rolls his eyes at him, and he treats him very coldly. Right? So perhaps so. There is that insinuation that they're having an affair or something like that.
I also found it very interesting that Mrs. Montague was so disrespectful towards the rest of the people in the experiment.
Right? She's very condescending, especially to Eleanor. Um, Eleanor is up on that staircase. She might die. Miss Montague's just like, move out of the way in case she falls, so she doesn't fall into you. Right? So very unconcerned with everyone else involved. Nicole says she'll be RB. Um, Lauren, what did you think of this character? Do you agree with Nicole? This seemed like a little weird relationship.
I kind of got the vibes that it could have been an affair happening between them two. I also thought that Dr. Montague may have been like a failing scientist, so he brought his wife in with the Ouija board to see if the spirits were actually there or not.
Right.
This very much seems like a ditch effort to get something down on paper to say something happened.
Right. He definitely seems dismissive of her, right? Like I don't know, I don't necessarily know if she's part of would be part of his experiment or not. Like he definitely he seems very condescending of like her mysticism. He's like all women, right? They love their Ouija boards, right? So he he seems like he kind of even like rolls his eyes at her, um, to some extent. Arthur, on the other hand, is all about it. He's like, let's try to find some ghosts with this Ouija board. Right?
Yeah, it definitely seems like something's there, like Lauren and Nicole said. I don't see there being a possible, not a possibility that there's not, because I say it's very, very good chance that there is something going on behind closed doors that Dr. Montague might not know about, or he could know about, and just might be a little weird.
Yeah, we mentioned last time that the author Shirley Jackson found herself involved in something like this, right? Because her husband um, wanted an open relationship because he couldn't stop fooling around with his students, right? So, if we wanted to bring the author's life into the character here, right, it would make sense. It would make sense that we would have a character like this with these questions. The book's very risque for a night. This book was written in 1959. It's very risque for a 50s book, I think, with its depictions of sexuality. It insinuates stuff without necessarily spelling it out. Oh, I had to get past the guy revving his big engine outside. So yeah, what were you guys? Were you guys surprised? I don't know, just the depictions of sexualities and stuff in the book, right? Were you guys surprised at, or did you not think it was very risque at all? What did you guys think of that?
I mean, until I got into this class, it didn't even cross my mind because I wasn't really paying close attention to that part. I was just trying to get through the book as fast as I could.
Right, as we all do in a class like this. Huh?
So honestly, I didn't notice anything about this until you kind of just started talking about it, and I kind of just gone on with it. Because now that I think about it, it's definite possibility.
Yeah, I mean, even like we definitely we'll wait to get to this part till Nicole comes back. I, I was going to mention the blood on the walls that says "Help Eleanor come home." Right, we're going to unpack what that's all about. It's insinuated even that might be like menstrual blood or something like that, right? The what? Because Theo's clothes are covered in this blood. Um, so, like I think you mentioned earlier, Ryan, that's one of the only sort of like really perhaps supernatural things that happen in the book. Besides the knocking on the walls and things like that.
Sorry, my brother started talking in the background, and I completely lost my train of thought. Can you repeat that? Sorry.
Yeah, like I mentioned like the blood. What's the blood on the walls mean? Um, if we're talking, it's been talked about. I've read articles to the effect before that suggest that that's like menstrual blood, right? And that's perhaps one of we should take a look at that passage here in a second.
The blood on the wall kind of got me going a little bit. Can you shut up? The blood on the wall kind of got me wondering a little bit because that's about the most paranormal thing you can think of. My first thought, however, was that Eleanor wrote that on the wall with some kind of drippy paint, but it was confirmed to be blood, I think. So that kind of got me a little going, like maybe the house really is haunted and there's some kind of entity trying to communicate with Eleanor or with the rest of the people there for Eleanor's sake.
Right. So, are you of the mindset then, Ryan, that maybe the house is haunted?
With that little tidbit of information, I'd say it's 100% possible. I can't say for 100% certain that it is, but I'd say there's something going on there. Maybe haunted, maybe cult, maybe something else, but it's not natural.
Lauren, you seemed very skeptical, I think, on your discussion post that the house is in fact haunted. You seemed to mostly think it was mostly in Eleanor's imagination, if I recall.
Honestly thought it was Eleanor's imagination because only stuff that happened was whenever Eleanor witnessed it and nobody else was around to witness it with her. Besides the writing on the wall, Theodora walked into the room or something. I can't remember that part. But only the paranormal stuff that would happen, Eleanor was the only one to witness it. So I'm thinking it's just her imagination.
Right. So nothing happens apart from when Eleanor's involved. Right. Like I think pretty close to the end of the book, when they hear the intense knocking on the walls. Yeah, they hear the very intense knocking on the walls near the end. Like Miss Montague doesn't even hear that. That's right. Neither does neither does her guy, right? So that would make sense, one, from that perspective. Like every time something supernatural happens, it's Eleanor. So is it really supernatural then? Is that you back, Nicole?
Yeah, that's me. I had to log on to my iPhone. The internet's crapped out on me.
Yeah, well, I was wanting to get your thoughts, especially on what you thought about the blood on the wall, right? I was implying that might be like a sexual image of some sort. I was going to see.
I felt that way. I really don't know how to explain it or sum it up. I feel like it was kind of where it was an attack on Theodora's femininity. I feel like if it wasn't from Eleanor, then it was subconsciously triggered by her feelings towards her. Because throughout the whole thing, we had Eleanor, feeling like almost less of a woman because of Theodora and because of, I guess, the ease, you could say, that she had with talking to people, with being social, all the things that women are supposed to be so good at doing.
Right. Yeah, on page, it's on in my book, page 116. It's in chapter. Let's see if I can point you guys to this passage. It's in section 5, right before section 3, in chapter 5. And there's this whole exchange about cleaning up the blood. Eleanor says, "I told you it makes me sick, but it doesn't frighten me," she said, pleased, and turned to Theodora. Theodora was lying on Eleanor's bed, and Eleanor saw what a queasy turn that Theodora had gotten red on her hands, and it was rubbing off onto Eleanor's pillow. Look, she said harshly, coming over to Theodora, you'll have to wear my clothes until you get new ones, until we get the others cleaned. Cleaned? Theodora rolled convulsively on the bed and pressed her stained hands against her eyes. Cleaned? For heaven's sake, Eleanor said, let me wash you off. She thought without trying to find a reason that she had never felt such uncontrollable loathing for any person before. She went into the bathroom and soaked the towel and came back to scrub roughly at Theodora's hands and face. They're filthy with the stuff, she said, hating to touch Theodora. Suddenly, Theodora smiled at her. I don't really think you did it, she said, and Eleanor turned to see that Luke was behind her looking down at them. What a fool I am, Theodora said to him, and Luke laughed. Yeah, so that passage is what made me think that maybe there's a deeper meaning here, right? Just because Eleanor did feel this sort of loathing for Theodora.
Also, sorry to interrupt, I also felt like since Eleanor had the only real relationship she had known was that of a caregiver for the past 11 years, I think it was. I think the biggest issue she had with Theodora was how independent she was and that she really didn't need anyone's help. And her being in that situation in a way almost made Eleanor happy, but at the same time, it made her hate her because the thing she hated most was taking care of her mother and losing her shot at life because of that, but it's also all she'd ever known.
Right. So, yeah, Theodora's confidence and all that type of stuff perhaps rubs Eleanor the wrong way. She also grows very dependent on Theodora the further we go through this. Like she asked, like Ryan said earlier, she asked to move in with Theodora, and Theodora's like very coldly is like, I'm not in the habit of taking in stray cats. Right? That's what she says. Even those two, they have a very interesting friendship in the book.
I really wish throughout it that we would have gotten more of Theodora's perspective on it, because I just didn't understand why she was so cruel to Eleanor in so many instances, because she really was. I couldn't think of another word to describe it other than cruel. Like saying, do you not know when you're not wanted or something like that whenever Eleanor asked to move in with her. I just felt like it was really unwarranted for her to be that mean.
Right. Yeah, like she kind of snubs Eleanor after that, hanging around Luke and things like that. Yeah, Ryan, you suggested that might have even taken Eleanor down her death spiral, right? This rejection from Theodora.
Yeah, that would. Cannot catch a break. That would be my first guess as to why she started being all suicidal. Because that. Oh my God! Hold on. It's gonna have to take a minute. I'm just gonna type it.
Cole, do you think there's more to these two relationships than just friendship in the book, or do you think that we might be reading it too I don't know, we might be going out of the box a little too much? What do you think?
Honestly, I'm really not sure. I watched really carefully as I was reading for like any overly sexual notions from Theodora or Eleanor. And really, I didn't get very many. Like, it was obvious to me that Eleanor wasn't straight. Or not Eleanor, but that Theodora wasn't straight. but I just didn't get where she was coming on to Eleanor. I never got that. And I feel like more than anything, it wasn't Theodora's interactions with Luke that drove Eleanor to try and kill herself. I think it was the rejection from Theodora herself. Like, I feel like that is what really pushed her. And also, like, Eleanor, the kind of vibe psychologically I got from her was like bipolar depression and maybe some kind of dissociative disorder, because towards the end, right before she tries to kill herself, we see her thinking that, you know, she's sitting out by the lake house or whatever on the property, and that she can still hear everyone inside.
We lost you there, Nicole. You said she could hear everyone inside.
And just that idea that she was totally separate from it, but she was still experiencing all these things at once, all these different people's actions, even though they were in different parts of the house and everything.
Right. Yeah, Lauren mentioned while you were gone, Nicole, how curious it is that everything supernatural happens when Eleanor's around. Like, nothing happens unless she's around, which is interesting.
It makes you think almost that the house is kind of triggered by insecurity, not just, you know, basic insecurity, insecure, unsound mind or something like that. That's how I felt, especially after the portion where Luke found that scrapbook that Hugh Crane had made for his daughter. I don't think that even in the 1800s, I don't think someone with a sound mind could write something like that and think it was totally all right for a little kid.
Yes, he drew out the 7 deadly sins, lust, and you know, I remember Luke saying, "Darn, this depiction of lust is something else." But lust and greed and slothfulness and all that type of stuff, gluttony. But if you remember too, we found what you just said makes sense, Nicole, because remember the housekeeper who was with one of Hugh Crane's daughters. We remember she killed herself. Right, she killed herself if we remember, after so much nagging and from the community. So maybe if the house is supernatural, maybe it does prey on the mentally ill.
And as far I know, I didn't get to put my opinion out there on Mr. Oh, what's the doctor's name? I forgot.
Montague.
On his wife. I felt like she kind of symbolized the idea of like the angry, pushy feminist almost. That's what I got from her. Like, her ideas are correct and there is no questioning it. There is no bargaining and there's no middle ground. And I don't know if I was the only one that got that or not.
Yeah, while you were gone, we talked about how weird it was, the relationship with her and Arthur. We talked about how that might even like echo Shirley Jackson's own relationship with her husband. But no, we didn't talk about how she's so pushy, and we talked about how she's condescending. We didn't talk about like how she might be like this depiction of a pushy feminist.
I thought as far as like her condescension, I felt like that was kind of a mirror of mansplaining in a way. Like, she was kind of emasculating her husband and I guess taking the power from him in that situation where he was supposed to be running the experiment and he was supposed to be the doctor.
Yeah. Do you think that this character is meant to be mocked in a way? Do you think Jackson meant her to be not taken seriously?
I think so. I think that either she was meant to not be taken seriously or meant to cast a bad light on women who kind of take up their, like, choose to be powerful and choose to take up space and choose to have an opinion.
Right. It's interesting that we get a character like that from a female author. Normally, if you would think it would be a male author who would write a character like this, right? But
It is surprising, but in a lot of cases, especially back then, women would internalize the patriarchy so much that they would start to feel that way themselves.
right. No, it still happens to this day, right? A certain, you see some women who go against like equal rights and things like that. Yeah, her Ouija boards, right? If it's not a condescending of her, I think it's at least Jackson making fun of this idea of mysticism and astrology and all of this type of stuff. It does seem to me that the author, at least, is very dismissive of that type of supernatural discussion. Yeah, did this book take any of you guys by surprise? Did you think there'd be more spooks and things jumping out at people and things like that?
Honestly, thought it'd be a little bit scarier, but there wasn't really much happening.
Right. Again, that kind of raises the question, how can a book be scary, right, compared to a movie, which when you see it, maybe invokes fear and whatnot more in you, get your heart racing more. Jackson, this book doesn't answer a lot of questions that we have. Like it raises the issue, but she never explains stuff. Like remember when Theodora and Eleanor saw this spooky picnic or whatever, right? Theodora saw something, but the narrator of the story never tells us what it was that she saw. And they run away back to the house. See, after they see that spooky apparition or whatever at the picnic site. There's also the great passage where Eleanor she hears the rumblings in the night, and she thinks she's holding Theodora's hand, but she's not. She was holding somebody's hand, but she doesn't. It wasn't Theodora's. Right. So whose hand was it? So that's another question that the book leaves unanswered. Ambiguity in horror is often especially in horror books, that's often an effect, right? If you explain everything, maybe it isn't so scary anymore, right? So it's the classic fear of the unknown, right? That we got from Lovecraft, right? It's the unknown that we fear. That's what I'm going on this tangent just because I posed that, right? If there would have been like more bumps in the night and an actual ghost jumping out at them going boo, right? Would the book be as effective in that case?
I don't think so. I think if they would have accomplished their goal in going there and they would have gotten to the bottom of it, it really wouldn't have been, it wouldn't be something we were studying in literature or in this class today.
Right. It'd be a traditional ghost story, right? Like there's millions of them, right?
The book was better off going the way it went with the story. It didn't strike you as scary, but it did It was mainly talking about supernatural events and the story of one particular person with a not so great life, which is depicted very clearly throughout the story. I think that's what made the book more like a better book than your average haunted house book you would see on the market. I think that's why it would be in a literature class rather than a haunted book, scary ghost. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you're interested in seeing this book done in that way, watch the 90s version of the movie. The 90s version of the movie has no subtlety at all. Right? So Hugh Crane is literally like the evil demonic ghost going boo in the night in that version of the movie.
So it's essentially like the Harry Potter books, where the movies are almost nothing alike the book.
The only thing that's similar about that movie and this book is Eleanor's insecure, like she is, but everything is quite literally spelled out and real in the 90s version of the movie. I think the ghost even knocks Luke's head off, knocks his head off in the movie. So Luke dies in the 90s movie. So that didn't happen in the book. It's Owen Wilson who plays Luke, so it makes it kind of funny. Yeah, that whole movie is just off the wall. Catherine Zeta-Jones plays Theodora. Nothing is subtle about her performance. Like she plays her off as this very flamboyant lesbian. It would be fun. It would be fun if you guys watched that movie. That way we could talk about how cheesy it is. I'm not going to require you to, but it would be
I
fun.
would watch the movie just to say that it's almost nothing like the book, like entirely different, just like Harry Potter. Because they make the movies and have some premise in the book. It's based on the book, and then half the story has nothing to do with the book.
I don't remember the Harry Potter movies straying from the book a lot. I don't remember that.
There's several scenes that are in the book that never happen in the movies, and some things that are completely different. My dad would be able to tell you he read all the books and watched all the movies.
Yeah, the 1960s version of this book. I guess the 1960s movie came out like 4 years after this book came out. But it plays it very straight and to the point. Like maybe it's Eleanor who's crazy. It's not necessarily things that go bump in the night. So it would be an interesting compare and contrast assignment to compare and contrast the two. Actually, I'll think about it for your final. Well, for one of your assignments, I might actually have you guys look up a adaptation of one of these. Write a paper about it, maybe for your next short paper.
I know we have a short paper to work on right now.
The one on Frankenstein, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to find the prompt. I don't remember where it was.
Should be up on Blackboard.
Because I know I was looking for it last night and can never find it.
Might have forgotten to upload it. Let me look.
Yeah, there's only short paper 1.
Okay. I'll upload it. Upload it real
Went
quick.
last night to put in a paragraph or 2 before I go to sleep, and I couldn't find it.
Yeah, let me actually do that right now while you guys are here. We fixed it. The due date was next Monday, wasn't it?
Tuesday.
Tuesday. We fixed that again really quick. Tuesday the 16th. As far as your first short papers, I want to try to get those back to you sometime over the weekend. Should have those back soon. I've been preoccupied with midterm stuff and English 101 the past couple of days. So I will try to get that to you over the weekend. The whole spring break's going to be me playing catch up on all this grading I got. Let's see.
Yeah, I get to play catch up in history because I haven't worked or done anything at all in the class yet.
Has he ever showed up for any Zoom meetings at this point?
He actually showed up for one this week. Last week, he said he showed up 45 minutes late. This is probably why I never went.
All right, I got it up. I got the prompt up for you now.
All right, now I have that on my computer.
I'll
I'm
create.
glad I said something because I wouldn't have been able to write the paper without the prompt.
Yeah, I'll create the Dropbox right now too. While I'm thinking about it. The Dropbox is up too under submit essays here. So you should be able to see that now too. You guys have any questions about the paper? Anything that I can answer while I've got you here?
Does it matter how many words are in it? Like, do I have to shoot for 1,000 or so?
I'm more interested in page counts. So like if you can get 3 to 4 pages, that's what I'm looking for, double spaced. I'm not gonna, if you have 950 words, or I'm not gonna knock you off points for that. If that answers your question.
Okay. Because I remember in the last paper, I didn't have 1,000 words. I had like 960 or 70, and so 900 something.
Now, word count isn't necessarily.
Eleanor's
Yeah,
attempted suicide.
yeah. She attempts it and then she literally does it.
Yeah, I purely think it's because of Theodora, or I guess that's how you pronounce her name. Theodora essentially just led her to that because before she even got there, she was already on a terrible path. She was deteriorating mentally with every step she took because she had really no friends and hadn't had a good life for at least 15, 17 years. And then she got rejected cruelly, like I said in the chat bar. She got it after that harsh rejection. I'd say she pretty much had nails in the coffin already set for her, and she was determined to die. She didn't want to leave Hill House, so I'm assuming now this could be false, and you guys can contradict me if you want. I'm assuming that since she was on a suicidal path, she intentionally took her car and slammed it into a tree so she could kill herself so she would never have to leave.
Well, so we can go to the text to figure this out. The last page of the book. On page 181, the passage starts. They waved back at her dutifully, standing still, watching her. They will watch me down the drive as far as they can see, she thought. It is only civil for them to look at me until I am out of sight. So now I'm going. Journey's end and lovers meeting. But I won't go, she thought, and laughed aloud to herself. Hill House is not as easy as they are. Just by telling me to go away, they can't make me leave. Not if Hill House means me to stay. Go away, Eleanor, she chanted aloud. Go away, Eleanor. We don't want you anymore. Not in our Hill House. Go away, Eleanor. You can't stay here. But I can, she's saying. But I can. They don't make the rules around here. They can't turn me out or shut me out or laugh at me or hide from me. I won't go, and Hill House belongs to me. With what she perceived as quick cleverness, she pressed her foot down hard on the accelerator. They can't run fast enough to catch me this time, she thought, but by now they must be beginning to realize. I wonder who notices first. Luke, almost certainly. I can hear them calling now, she thought. The little footsteps running through Hill House and the soft sound of the hills pressing closer. I'm really doing it, she thought, turning the wheel to send the car directly at the great tree at this curve of the driveway. I'm really doing it. I'm doing this all by myself now, at last. This is me. I'm really, really, really doing it by myself. And the unending crashing sound before the car hurled into the tree, she thought clearly, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Why don't they stop me? So, yeah, I mean, but the spooky part of that, if we're gonna still say that maybe it was the house that caused her to commit suicide, the spooky part of that was, remember when I think it was Hugh Crane's first wife, that was the same tree that she crashed into before she moved into the house. So I don't know if you guys remember that story from close to the beginning of the book, but that was the same tree that she crashed into.
If I remember correctly, Dr. Montague, whenever he's telling them all the history of Hill House, a dude escaped on a horse and crashed into it too.
Yep. So maybe it was Montague influencing her. Go ahead, Ryan.
That leads me to think that she could have been possessed and then let go of in the last few moments where she had clarity, where she was saying, why am I doing this? Why aren't they stopping me? I said she had that last few seconds of clarity before it happened. And I say if she had that clarity when she was not in the car, she would never have done that.
Right. So you're leaving room to suggest then that it wasn't just her insecurities and her rejection, right? Perhaps it really was something that possessing her or something like that. That's the reason why this book's great. It makes us ask these questions. None of it is clear. Does this change your mind at all, any, Lauren? I know you're very skeptical about Eleanor. Does this make you think, oh, it might be something spooky now?
I'm about 50-50 on both of them now, since at the end there she's like, why am I doing this? Why ain't they stopping me? It's like the house possessed her to crash into the tree like everybody else who's tried to leave has.
Right. And we learn in that last paragraph where she wraps it all up. Within Hill House's walls continued upright, bricks met neatly, floors were firm, and doors were sensibly shut. Silence lay steadily against the wood and stone of Hill House, and whatever walked there walked alone. Right. So yeah, the whole book comes full circle in that last paragraph, because it talks about how Hill House has stood for 80 years and will probably stand for 80 more. Well, good. What did you get? What did you guys make of this one? Just as a appreciate it kind of book. Did you like this one better than Frankenstein?
It made more sense to me than Frankenstein because it had a more straightforward story than Frankenstein did. Because parts of Frankenstein, I actually couldn't tell if it was the monster speaking or Frankenstein. I kind of got lost in the text a few times in Frankenstein, and that didn't really happen too much in this book.
Good. It might be a more, just because it's a more modern book, right? 1810s versus the 1950s.
Yeah, that could probably be it. Definite possibility. It's like 100-year age difference between them.
What about you, Lauren? Which one did you prefer?
I honestly like The Haunting of Hill House better than Frankenstein. I guess it was just where it's better to read, and I actually like the story a little bit better.
Right. This is good. Yeah, this is one of my, this is probably my favorite horror novel. Yeah, I've always really dug this book. So she wrote a lot of other good stuff too. I would recommend you guys check out her other books if you really like this one. You want some good reads. That short story, The Lottery, is especially a good one. You can Google that and read it. It's a really interesting depiction of small town life and all the customs we have and festivals and stuff. It turns that into a horror story. So, well, so I won't hold you guys anymore. You guys have a good break. Enjoy yourselves. Like I said, if you find some time, start Dracula. That'll save you some headaches or after break. Turn your paper in by Tuesday, right? So we'll see you guys on the other end.
See you in about 20 minutes.
20 minutes.